All right, let's jump right in because we've got a big one today. This is a critical security alert for anyone out there using the n8n workflow automation platform. Security researchers have just found 2 new high-severity flaws, and the way they're being described is pretty intense. They're calling it a skeleton key for entire companies.
You know, I wanted to start with this exact quote from the JFrog security team because it just perfectly frames how serious this is. An effective skeleton key to the entire corporation. In the world of cybersecurity, that's not a phrase you throw around lightly. It means one single point of entry could unlock literally everything.
So, for those who might not be familiar, what is n8n? Well, the easiest way to picture it is as the digital nervous system of a company. It's the glue, right? It connects everything from your sales data and internal identity systems all the way to your powerful LLM APIs. And just like a real nervous system, if something goes wrong at the core, it doesn't just affect one little part, it can compromise the whole thing.
Okay, so keeping that in mind, let's get into the specifics. What are these 2 critical flaws that the researchers actually found? So here's the breakdown. We're looking at 2 different flaws. The first one, which affects JavaScript, has an absolutely staggering 9.9 severity score. The second is a very similar problem, but in Python, and that's rated at a super high 8.5. Both of these are what's known as an eval injection, which is really just a way of saying an attacker can fool the system into running malicious code by breaking out of the digital sandbox that's supposed to keep everything contained.
Let's just pause on this number for a second. 9.9 out of 10. You have to remember, the scale for rating how bad these things are, the CVSS score, it only goes up to 10.
So when you see a 9.9, that isn't just critical. It is right on the edge of being the worst possible rating a flaw can get. A score that high tells you 2 things. Not only is it incredibly damaging if exploited, but it's also probably not that hard for an attacker to actually pull off. And that combo, high impact, low complexity, that's what makes this so dangerous.
So what does that skeleton key actually unlock? Well, a successful attack means a complete takeover of the n8n platform itself. And from there, an attacker could just pivot to every single system it's connected to. We're talking stealing sales data, expensive LLM API keys, maybe even compromising your internal identity systems. And what's really crucial here is that the report says this is a high risk even if your setup is in a supposedly secure internal execution mode. Now, what makes this even more alarming is the timing. See, this discovery isn't happening in a vacuum. It's actually part of a very recent and pretty worrying pattern. It was just a few weeks ago that researchers found a different flaw called Nightmare, and that one was a perfect 10 out of 10 on the severity scale. It could be exploited by an unauthenticated attacker, meaning basically anyone on the internet. Now, these new flaws do require the attacker to have some level of access already, but seeing this cluster of critical vulnerabilities pop up in such a short period of time, that is a huge red flag.
All of this kind of brings up a fundamental question, doesn't it? We're always hearing about sandboxes and how they're supposed to prevent exactly this kind of thing. So why do they keep failing?
And this really gets to the heart of the matter. Why is it so incredibly hard to safely lock down powerful, dynamic languages like JavaScript and Python? I mean, these languages are the backbone of tools like n8, but all that flexibility they give us, well, it's a real double-edged sword. One of the researchers, n8n, put it perfectly. He said these vulnerabilities show just how difficult it is to safely sandbox these languages. The very things that make them so powerful are also what makes them so tough to contain. Even when you have multiple layers of security, attackers can find these subtle, often overlooked behaviors in the language itself to exploit.
So how do they actually do it? Well, usually they don't just kick down the front door of the sandbox. They find the little cracks and wiggle their way through. They might use some obscure feature of the language that the sandbox designers just didn't account for, or find a weird way the code interpreter behaves. In this specific case, the report mentioned it was a mix of old, unsupported code and some clever manipulation of how errors are handled that let them break free.
Okay, so we've talked about the flaws, and we've talked about the root of the problem. Now let's get to the most important part. If you're an n8n user, what do you need to do, like right now?
The guidance here is crystal clear. You have to patch, and you have to do it immediately. To fix that critical 9.9 JavaScript flaw, you need to update to one of the versions you see here. And to fix the Python one, you'll need one of these other versions. The bottom line is really simple. Go check your n8n version and get it updated now.
And that really brings us to our final thought for today.
This n8n story is a huge reminder that the very tools we depend on to connect our digital world can also become these massive single points of failure. And it leaves us with a pretty important question to think about. What skeleton keys might be hiding in your most trusted tools? And what's your plan for when, not if, they're eventually found?